And now, a word from
Infirmary Media.
Hey dudes and dudettes, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Be Kind and Rewind podcast, a podcast chock full of everything that is nostalgic about the 80s, 90s, and more. I'm your host, Carlos. This episode, we're cracking open some old school books to list the best and worst of those that were adapted to film for our enjoyment or displeasure. So joining me is a man who is hosting his own podcast dedicated to sampling books with a twist. So I welcome the host of the Sample Chapter podcast, Jason Meuschke, to the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Carlos. I really appreciate you bringing me on.
No, I appreciate you reached out not too long ago and you brought up this great idea about talking about some of these obscure 80s and 90s books that were turned into movies that, of course, we're just talking about going through the research. We had so many that we had no idea about, so I can't wait to get into it. So again, thank you for coming on, but let the listeners know a little bit about your podcast and how it came to be.
Well, I thank you, by the way. Well, the podcast came about. I'd been interested for a while. I've been listening to lots of author podcasts and, of course, lots of fun stuff like your show and other pop cultural things. But when I decided I'd get into podcasting, it was to kind of further my writing career. I wanted to kind of give myself a platform. And I thought, well, how can I do something that would be interesting and giving back and something that would bring people back each week? Kind of like your show, it's got a great theme and people want to come back every week.
Thank you.
And I thought, well, what if instead of just a regular author interview, what if they read a sample chapter of their book, just like whenever we would go to the library or go to, Barnes & Noble or Borders or, whatever, and listen to an author and they would read and answer a few questions and all. So I did some research and it seems so far still that I think I'm the only show that liked that. And I thought, so I kind of ran with it and it's got a good reception.
That's the way to go. You got to find that niche and then also something that you enjoy as well. So it's a perfect combination, and that's awesome too. You get to talk to these authors. So who's kind of been your favorite one? Have you had any like bucket list ones that you've been able to talk to already so far, or you want to?
I've definitely got some bucket lists. Ernest Cline would be nice if I can.
Oh, yes.
If he's ever listening. Of course, the master Stephen King. Who knows if one of his books might come up. There's just so many others. Robert McCammon. But I've had a lot of fun with the authors who have come on so far. There's some of our local writing group. I've been able to bring them forward, and that's been one of the really fun things. Is I keep having I run into some authors who this is the first time they've ever been interviewed. This is the first time they've ever been on a podcast. They've never done anything like this before, so it's fun for me also to get to give them this little bit of accessibility to new fans and new readers. And but at the same time, I run into, I think my 6th or 7th episode, I had a guy who was, at the time, he was number 5 or number 6 on Amazon, all of Amazon, like all the books. He was there at that time. So I was nervous, to say the least, to be speaking to him. And,
no, I get you. I get that way too as well. When we talk to some of these celebrities, it's just natural nerves. You want to make sure you're, presenting the best version of yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed. I don't know how you do it, getting some of these people on there, but I mean, I was listening to your podcast with the guys from Sandlot, and all. I mean, yeah, this is a lot of fun.
It's persistence, I guess, is the best way to say it. You just kind of find the ones who answer the messages on certain platforms or certain social media, and you luck out, and sometimes they get back to you right away. Sometimes it's 3 months later, I've told people. So you kind of have to you can't write them all off. I've gotten messages, like I said, 3 months later, and it's worked out. So yeah, that's, again, like you said, it's awesome to carve that little niche that you have with the books, because of course everybody loves reading books. Books has always been popular, but I feel like now with podcasting, Audible, and all these other options now, that it's spread to a wider audience. And you talked about with these authors, I'm sure they're ecstatic to have someone like you just reach out and be like, hey, I want to talk to you about your book and let's get into some details. Let's delve into a little bit of a different angle, a different perspective, as opposed to just a full-on book review. So I bet they're not only excited to come on to your show and talk about it, but to have that different angle about it as well.
Oh yeah, and it's been a blast. It's been fun, and I think I can speak from experience. I know the authors really appreciate too that I go back and I edit whenever they were talking or whenever they're reading, because I had my daughters interview me for my book, and I got a look at how it was on the other side of the microphone and read that chapter, and oh gosh, it was just constant and
it's a learning experience for sure, but that's the power and the magic of editing as well.
Exactly.
Well, cool. And you mentioned you got your book that you've released already. Is that correct?
Yeah. It came out in April. It's called 9 Mile Bridge. It's based on an urban legend where I grew up about a haunted bridge, and I used to take my high school friends and I back in the 80s. We used to take underclassmen out to this place, and we would set it up and do some things to make it a little bit creepier, and we had a lot of fun with it. And a few decades later, we found out that the bridge got rebuilt, and some friends of mine reached out to me at the time I was living in Japan, and they said, hey man, by the way, there's an article in the paper, the bridge got rebuilt, and they did a story talking about how it used to be, and they used the story that we used to tell. And so I was like, oh,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and I was at the time I was trying to figure out, like, well, if I want to write, what am I going to write for my first book? And that just kind of, it was like the light bulb went off, and so I ran with it, and it's been a lot of fun.
Well, write what you know, they always say.
Exactly.
Or it's always do what you know, write what you know, all in the same verse. But that's cool. So where can people find it? If can they listen on Audible, or is it on Amazon, or physical copies as well?
Yeah, there's print, ebook, and then it's all on Amazon. And if they are a Kindle Unlimited subscriber, they can download it for free.
So who is the voice for your Audible? Did you offer your own voice to do the reading?
I haven't done an Audible yet, but seeing as with being in podcasting, I got some equipment. I'm thinking, maybe I'll look into that and maybe try and do something. We'll see. I don't know.
It could be your second calling. You never know. Well, awesome. Well, Jason, we'll get all this stuff linked in the description so people can check out the podcast and also check out your book as well, so we can start getting some listeners for that one as well. And then we'll talk about a little bit later, but getting into what we're here for today, talking about some of these 80s and 90s books that were adapted to film. Like we were talking about, films or books, they've been adapted to film since day one. It's one Hollywood 101, but something that you don't really think about until you get older and you start realizing, oh, I actually read that book and now it's a movie, or you just start, or you see it and you realize the differences and you start nitpicking and things like that.
Right.
Excuse me. So yeah, I kind of going through kind of our research, like were there some books that jumped out at you that you're like, I can't believe this was adapted?
Well, yeah, I mean, there was an old Clint Eastwood movie where he was a pilot sent to Russia to steal a plane called Firefox. I had no idea that was based on a book. I mean, it just kind of went on from there. Total Recall. See, I actually have a part of my
I saw a
list here
couple
with me.
of Arnold ones, like The Running Man. I had no idea The Running Man was based off a book.
Yeah, yes. That I knew. My mom wouldn't allow me to read Stephen King growing up, so I'd have to either borrow from friends or whatever. But this guy Stephen Bachman, I could read, and at that time we didn't know that was Stephen King, and it was Bachman who wrote Running Man, and I was reading that. I was like, oh, this
so that
is
was
so
his
cool.
alias? Is that what he his pseudonym or whatever he would write under?
Yep, because like today we've got the independent books, and so you can put out a book as fast as you can write it. King was kind of upset that he couldn't put books out as fast as he was writing them, so he created an alter ego and started doing other books.
Well, I mean, why not? I mean, yeah. And
exactly.
we've seen like screenwriters and people do that in the past in Hollywood. It's not uncommon for writers to do that. We've seen novelists. I'm trying to think of some novelists who have been known to do that, right, under different names. But yeah, it's like you said, it was Stephen King. I'm trying to think of a few that I had seen. Like I said, The Running Man. I guess what was this one? I'm trying to think. I knew that Fight Club was a book, but I don't think I was too familiar with the source material from when I first saw it. That was definitely one that when you see the movie, it makes you, in retrospect, I got to go read this book to see if it's like, is it hold up to this movie, vice versa. So yeah, and like I said, they've been doing this since day one, and so we just want to talk about, our best and worst one. We have our 3 best and our 3 worst that we want to get into. Now, I wouldn't say in any particular order, unless you've ordered yours, and mine aren't really in any sort of order.
Oh, I tell you, ordering was, I mean, it was like cutting off an arm. Oh
I
my
actually moved
gosh.
one from my best to my worst list after going through some other ones. I was rearranging and like second guessing my own
Yeah.
opinions, things like that.
Oh, and there for a while, I realized I had my list even had movies based on comic books, and I realized like, oh wait, I can't put Flash Gordon on here. I got to take that off. And then as several others like, okay, wait a minute, all right, let's reorganize here, and
And then
gosh,
finding
yeah.
information about the books and the movies, like it was like
Yeah.
like the notes just kept building and building. I was like, man, I'm gonna have a plethora of information, even though I felt that I had maybe not cut it down, but like maybe narrowed our information a bit. But no, I'm still in double digits when it comes to notes at this point. So. But I'm
gosh, yeah.
excited. I'm excited because, like you said, it just kept unraveling, finding cool books or books that were made in movies that I had no idea. Like I have to add that. So I'm excited to get into this. So we'll just go back and forth. We'll do one of our best. We'll go one of our worst, and we'll just make it down the list that way. Sound good to you?
Sounds great.
All right. Well, I'm gonna jump into it. I'm gonna start off with my first best one. In regards to books that were adapted to movies, this book came out in 1967. And it's called The Outsiders.
We gotta get in with those socials. Let's do it for Johnny, man. We'll do it for Johnny.
Oh yes.
So this one was written by forget what the first name Hinton, the last name Hinton. Was 15 when she started writing the novel. Did most of the work when she was 16 in junior high, and then was 18 when the book was published. So I could barely finish my own paper reports in school, let alone write an extra book. And this girl is, getting books published at 18. But the kind of a quick summary of the plot details the conflict between the two rival gangs divided by their socioeconomic status. The greasers, working class, versus the upper class socias, which for some reason as a kid I had no idea what the hell that was even referencing. But of course it's short for socials, which even now I still would be like, that's still, I think you could come up with something better, but that's my own opinion. And then the story's perspective from Pony Boy, Stay Golden Pony Boy. And then, it just takes place in Oklahoma, 1965, but it's never really explicitly stated in the book. But it's one of those books that's part of the curriculum in a lot of schools, and it was really mixed bag. Like like with To Kill a Mockingbird, like do we let our kids read this? Do we want to subject our kids to this? And I had no problem reading this book. Was this part of your curriculum growing up?
Oh yeah, that along with like 1984 and
1984. They wouldn't even fathom think like mentioning that anymore in schools.
That was fantastic, and this was back in the time for me that the movie wasn't real old, but once it came out long enough, then the schools got to bring the book in, and bring the movie in. We'd get to watch some of it, and so a lot of times I would just kind of skim over the book and let the teacher read some of it, and then I'm kind of like, okay, what's this? Okay, Pony Boy, there we go, and then look forward to when the movie came out and get to watch that with they're in classroom.
Yeah, and so for me, it was kind of one of the reverse. Like, I think the movie came out in 1983, which we'll get into, and I'm of course 80s baby, so 1984. So I was just barely a year old when it came out. So I got my first knowledge of it through the movie, and of course you get to see like Francis Ford Coppola who directed it, and then we had the ensemble of great actors. So we had Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid, Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe, Matt Dillon, Tom Cruise, Patrick Swayze, Diane Lane as well. So like it's like for me, even at that point, like I knew when I saw it like a couple years later, I was like, well, these guys are making their way in Hollywood right now. Like, it's crazy that they're all in the same movie, even in this day and age, I guess. And it was on a $10 million budget. It made $33 million. Which is pretty good for early 80s type movie. Low budget, I would call it almost an indie, because it's not really high action unless the gang the gang fight at the end, which is most of the budget was spent on smoke at that point.
I think so.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I guess Francis Ford Coppola had no intentions of directing the movie, but I guess he was inspired by this librarian from Lone Star Elementary in Fresno, California. Her students were responsible for inspiring them. They had written basically their own like version, like an adaptation of it, and he liked it so much that he wanted to kind of tinker with a little bit and make the movie out of it, which is crazy that a librarian's class would get Francis Ford Coppola to change his mind or to convince him. So it's a crazy little tit factor there. I'm trying to think other things. So during the film, just a little bit about during like the shooting, I guess Coppola wanted like the realism to be so real that like he was pushing the envelope a little too much to the point where the church burning scene was actually super real, and they're like burning structures like around it and like some of the wooded area around it. So like they actually had to bring in the fire trucks and everything. So good old Francis pushing the envelope is always to get that realism that he gets. But the movie's 64% on Rotten Tomatoes, on 39 reviews. Roger Ebert awarded the film 2.5 out of 4 stars, citing problems with Coppola's vision. So I think he had it out for him. I think he still hated him from the 70s. He says the characters wind up in pictures like framed, like pictures framed and hanging on the screen. So it won some awards. Not the big awards, but it won some decent small young artist awards, things like that. But through the curriculum in schools, through VHS, through Ralph Macchio and every other actor on there just kind of being in awesome movies afterwards, we always go back to The Outsiders. I rented it a lot, so I'm sure it made, I don't know what money it made afterwards, but I think it did pretty well for itself.
Oh yeah, it probably made its budget back just in DVD or VHS rentals at Blockbuster down the years as well.
Library rentals, all those kids renting it from the library back in the day.
Yes,
you had to get those old school VHSs. So so The Outsiders, that was my first one, as my first best adaptation, I would say.
Stay gold, pony boy. Stay gold.
Solid choice. I like it.
Thank you. So what's yours?
All right, mine would be from 1982, First Blood.
John Rambo, a drifter, just passing through their town.
Morning! Headed north or south?
North.
Now jump in. I'll make sure you're heading the right direction.
They knew he was innocent.
Starting to dislike you.
Lots. John Rambo, one man who's been pushed too far.
You're finished! You've gone as far as you're gonna go!
Sylvester Stallone. This time he's fighting for his life. First Blood.
Was adapted by a novel of the same name by David Morrell. He wrote this in 1972 about the former Green Beret John Rambo, who was pursued into the mountains surrounding a small town by a tyrannical sheriff and his deputies, forcing him to survive using his combat skills. It was what I really liked about this was that they took the novel and kind of upped it a little bit, and one of the big differences was that Stallone wrote the script for this. He took
This is before or after Rocky? I couldn't remember. What year was that?
This was 1982, so this was after Rocky. I think they were filming this right before he started Rocky 3. But I think
so he's only on his 4th stage of HGH and steroids at this point in time in his life. And that's funny. You said First Blood. That was the other one that I had seen that I was like, I didn't know. I had no idea that was based off a book. So it's another intriguing one I might have to go back to.
Yeah. Well, he had. I'd read that he had sold the rights shortly after the book sold, but then I listened to an interview recently with the author, David Morrell, and he said actually he had sold the rights right before the book came out. So that was interesting. It went through numerous rewrites, 26 drafts before they brought Stallone on. He wrote the final draft of it, and he took the character of John Rambo, who didn't even have a first name in the book. It was just Rambo throughout, suffering from PTSD, and once he got triggered, he just became a killing machine, which in the movie, there's only one death, and it was incidental. It wasn't really his fault. So I thought that was really interesting that they took the whole thing and made it much more sympathetic. You understood where the sheriff was coming from. You understood where Rambo was coming from. So I thought it was a really nice, complex look into, two different personas. You got what they don't talk about is the sheriff is from the Korean War, that was hailed as, you guys are heroes, and now the Vietnam veteran who, they were spit at, and that was like, oh no, you're baby killers. And so it was two different generations coming together in this. So that was something that really amazed me. I really loved it. They had some different things, like the knife was not in the novel. That was something they came up with for it, which then set off a whole plethora of businesses for Bowie knives again.
I'm sure. I mean, I bought my big old black knife the other day, and I was like, "Yep, John Rambo would carry this."
Exactly. Yep. I remember I used to go to every catalog I could find. I'd look. Usually in the back, I could find the John Rambo knife, and my friends and I would get together and gather our money so we could order one that we could share. And like, no, this one's got the compass on it. This is what he likes. So. Beyond, they take the relationship between Rambo and Troutman, which really was non-existent in the book. Rambo didn't even hardly know him. He was just one of the other officers. They didn't know him, even though he trained him. But for the movie, they made that almost a father figure type relationship. And then, of course, the ending. There was 3 different endings in the novel. Rambo was killed, along with the sheriff. They filmed 2 different versions of that for the movie. One of them was Rambo committing suicide, and another one, I believe it was the Colonel killing Rambo. And then, of course, the one that became famous was the one they went with, where he surrendered, which ironically became hated for a long time by a lot of the critics who said it had no conclusion. But in retrospect, it really, I mean, that brought about the numerous sequels, and I thought it was interesting because it was a good way to what else are they going to do? It's okay. Rambo's going to obviously go off to jail, and who knows if the sheriff's going to live. But I kind of like the what would you call it? The ambiguous ending to it. You don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, it was one of those movies as a kid growing up. You kind of only see the trailers and the snippets of it, and they always show the action because that's what they want to sell. But you, as a kid, you're not open to the humanization that they're trying to do to Rambo, and also to the police chief. Like you said, they both have their reasons for the way they're acting and the way that they're treating others, but to see some of the decision making that Rambo makes in the movie. A little more conscious in regards to not killing anybody. Like you said, there's only one death, whereas once you get further into Rambo's, it's the death count that people are more worried about. So it is crazy that the first one was mild in that regard, and still kept it more of a commentary as opposed to a straight up action movie. Yeah, and
they kind of back off and let. I didn't really realize it till going in depth with this, but they really backed off and let the other characters in the movie tell the story of John Rambo, as opposed to Rambo trying to tell his side. He's just surviving, and the others are talking about what's going on. Troutman telling, well, here's what Rambo went through in the war, while the sheriff's like, well, this is what my deputies and I are going through trying to deal with this guy. And so, it's one of those that, like you said, as a kid, I'm watching it and I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I'll take on the town, and I will run out and I'll survive in the woods. And then as I get older, it's like, yeah, I kind of see both sides of it now. It's like, wow, this is crazy.
And that's the product of a great story, when you can look back at it years later and have a different perspective, either from just 2 different characters, or if you're a child watching it and you took the kid's perspective and you're an adult now and you're now relating to the adults. It's kind of the same situation. So yeah, definitely another one people should check out, and see if they haven't watched the First Blood in a while.
Yep. I
agree.
Yeah,
solid pick. We have Outsiders and First Blood for our first bests. Now we're going to do our first worst. So the first worst one I have. So the book came out. The books came out a little earlier, but they were adapted in the 80s and 90s. I guess is kind of how we're going. This one was back in 1965, sci-fi. This one was Dune.
A beginning is a very delicate time. Know then that it is the year 10,191. In this time, the most precious substance in the universe is the spice melange. The spice extends life. The spice exists on only one planet in the entire universe. The planet is Arrakis, also known as Dune.
Yes. By Frank Herbert. It's basically 2 separate serials, original in a magazine. And it won the Nebula Award for Best Novel. It was adapted, of course, to a movie. What we're talking about didn't quite do it the justice, but a quick plot overview is set in a distant future, feudal interstellar society in which noble houses in control of individual planets owe allegiances to the Padishah. I'm probably saying that wrong. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. Emperor. Dune tells the story of young Paul Atreides, who is a noble family, accepts the stewardship of desert planet Arrakis. I'm already getting lost just talking about the plot at this point in time. That's why I think it may not have translated well. But it's a lot of politics and religion and human emotion type. I guess basically it was a prequel, Star Wars prequels before the Star Wars prequels, where maybe the fans weren't as intrigued with the politics when it came to sci-fi. But it was a great idea, great concept. Just I think that the book itself was a huge hit. He had released I forget how many other editions of it have been released, but they focused. I think when they made the movie, they kind of conglomerate all into one story, like they usually do, to ruin the book one way or another. But were you a fan of Dune growing up? Was that one that you read?
I haven't read it. I've picked up snippets of it here and there, and I actually have a copy of the audiobook that I need to get to. So then I was told by a friend of mine who said, he finally read it years later, and it was kind of rough for him to get through. Fascinating but rough, and some of those books I'm thinking, okay, maybe I'll listen to it while I'm working, and I'll appreciate it a little bit more. And so that was one. But the movie itself, honestly, it kind of freaked me out as a kid. I remember the guys floating around on their lines and then spouting the black blood and whatever. And oh man, that was hard to see until I was older.
I was more terrified as like, why is Sting in this movie? What's happening? I think that's what threw me off more than anything else, and probably a lot of people. I mean, the movie was released on a $40 million budget and only made $30 million. So
wow.
You can say it's definitely considered a flop. Of course, whatever VHS sales would have done, but I don't think we would have gotten a sequel back then if the VHS sales would have offset the box office. So, but there are those dedicated fans who read the books who they maybe turn a blind eye when it comes to the movie, but they still own it for that merchandise purpose, I guess. Mm-hmm. It was definitely a movie I haven't seen fully. I think it's one of those I've seen just parts of it throughout my life, and just kind of being like I was never able to piece things together, not knowing the background of the storyline, but just kind of through pop culture and through friends knowing that the book is solid, but the adaptation to movie just doesn't pan out. Yeah,
exactly. And I hear they're going to redo it or make a TV show. I can't remember which way they're going to go, but
they got Denis Villeneuve from The Arrival, Blade Runner 2049. He's tackling another old school sci-fi. So he's doing Dune. They're going to do a full-on movie. They're talking about Timothée Chalamet, the kid from Call Me by Your Name. He's looking to be in the starring role, and so I'm interested because I like the original Blade Runner. One of the 30 versions that we got of it, I liked it, and then we got the one from 2049, and Denis Villeneuve's done great work with with Arrival and Sicard. He's for the last 5 years that he's been making these bigger movies. He's been hitting them out of the park. So I am optimistic when it comes to this updated Dune, especially with the technology. I think they can pull off some of the things they couldn't back in the 80s with Sting in his hair.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's my first worst one is Dune. So what's your first worst?
All right, my first worst would be Flowers in the Attic from 1987.
My mother and father were the center of my universe when I was young, and I always wanted to grow up to be just like Mom. When Dad died, Mother's grief overwhelmed her. We had to sell everything we owned just to survive. And when that money ran out, they took our house. We were forced to leave the place where we all grew up, where all our happy memories were, the only home I'd ever known. Mother said there was only one place left to go.
They will do precisely as I've instructed. Remember, God sees everything. God will see whatever evil you do behind my back, and he will punish you for it.
Based on a novel of the same name which, I didn't have the year from when that came out, but it was by the author. Oh, okay, here we go. V.C. Andrews wrote it in 1979. Children are hidden away in the attic by their conspiring mother and grandmother. I mean, this is one of those movies that, especially as I got older and I understood what was going on, and I never read the book myself, but I look back, especially researching for this and understanding the source material and what was going on. Oh my gosh, are you familiar with this?
I'm not at all.
So the mother ran away from home and has 3 children, and the big secret is that this was her uncle she had fallen in love with and had a family with. And when he passed away, she brings the kids home to get her inheritance back. However, in order to get her inheritance, she's got to lock away the kids, and nobody can ever know about them. And so this is the story of the children in the attic. And it's a story of a lot of incest because there's more going on. Torture through just starving them, keeping them locked away, some poisoning, lots of wild stuff. And I remember going to the movies and seeing this because I had friends told me. It's like, oh yeah, this is just a wild movie, and it's gonna laugh. And when you make a movie that's supposed to be a thriller and you get more laughs than anything, they've done something wrong.
Yeah, probably not the way what they wanted to turn out.
Yes, yeah. So this was, I believe, one of the first starring roles for Christy Swanson before she went on to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. You got Louise Fletcher and Victoria Tennant. V.C. Andrews had final script approval on all. She had the rights to do all that for every script that came out. So that kind of, again, amazes me. I mean, I guess she wanted to make sure it stuck closer to the book. They had to make a lot of cuts. She actually passed away before the movie came out, and they had to make some edits. They had to do some changes, including a new ending to it, which the woman, the actress that played the mother, wouldn't come back and film, so they had to do it with a double to film the ending of it. There was a lot of tension, a lot of animosity going on over how the source material is going to be handled. The original test audiences were not happy, even though they brought in teens who had read the book, and so they were familiar with the source material. They still hated the movie and hated the idea that they were showing a lot of the incest and delving into a lot of that. And so they had to cut back on it and test on it. But I remember there being a scene where Christy Swanson's in a bathtub and talking to her brother, who's sitting right there next to her, and I just felt really uncomfortable in the theater.
He's like, I know you two are actors, but I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, I was like, why is her brother sitting right there next to her while she's taking a bath? Nah. But yeah, and it was the first book in a series. There was talk of a sequel. They even had a script that they sent out, but it just never got off the ground. They said it was just originally it was just going to be a lot more sex and a lot more incest, and it never went anywhere.
I feel like all early books and they're adapted, they always have to take out some sort of incest or ridiculous, over the top, like vulgar things. Like they had to take out like the child rape scene or whatever. Like, oh my God, Stephen King, what the hell were you thinking?
Oh gosh, yeah, the child orgy, oh man.
Yeah. So like, I feel like I've heard that multiple versions. Like, yeah, we adapted. We had to take out the giant rape scene though. Like, oh my God, these authors are just getting after it.
Yeah, but they, I guess they still hinted at it enough that I just remember laughing at some things that were supposed to be scary and they weren't. But other things just made me creeped out. And maybe it was just my teenage mind catching on to the subliminal things that are going on that were like, yeah, this isn't quite right. They've got some relationships that you're not supposed to have. And I didn't put that together till later on. And I remember talking to people who had read it, and they were like, well, you realize, yeah, these two, and this is
the extra reveal. You're like, oh God, it all hits you at once.
Yeah. So, and then doing the research into it, oh my gosh, it was just unbelievable, everything going on. And but yeah, yeah, that was my pick for one that did not do very good.
So, okay, again, what was the name? Because I got to check that one out.
Flowers in the Attic.
Flowers in the Attic, okay.
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah, that seems interesting, to say the least.
Interesting. I like that.
So yeah, solid one for your first worst. Let's see here. And so we're going to jump to now the second best one that we have. So my second best is, we talked about Stephen King. This is the first Stephen King one that would be on this one. It's from 1982. It is The Body, a.k.a. Stand By Me.
In all our lives, there's a fall from innocence. A time after which we are never the same. It happened in the summer of 1959. A long time ago.
I bet you anything that if we find him, we'll get our pictures in the paper. Yeah, we can even be on TV. Sure, we'll be heroes. Yeah. Just supposing that I told the story. Do you think that anyone would have believed it?
I'm never gonna get out of this town, am I, Corey? I can do anything you want, man.
So yeah, of course, this is Stephen King in his heyday, like you talked about. He's just pumping out material, and like at a rapid pace, but quality. You know, he's getting some good quality stuff out there, and this one was one of them. And you know, of course, a lot of not too many changes from the book to the movie, but it was definitely the most well received of the adaptations from Stephen King, and also in regards to, I think, the reception, because not only do people enjoy the book, but like people my age, you know, I am always connected to the movie. It just takes me back to, you know, hanging out with your friends. It was more of like hanging out with your friends as opposed to the side stories or the actual story that's going on in the book. But for me, it's like, oh, you're in a movie about coming of age, hanging out with your friends. You always stumble across some weird, maybe some abnormal, crazy stuff as kids, and that you don't know how to deal with when you do it. So of course, like I said, the plot for the book is very similar to the movie. You know, a couple kids growing up, small town out in Maine. You know, they hear about this dead body that, you know, they want to be the ones who are known to discover the body and get the recognition. But then they come to where it's all about the journey, and they get to the body, and it's just dealing with that reality of death, of like that kid is never going to wake up again. He's never going to brush his teeth again, things like that you when you see bodies like in a funeral or anywhere, you just kind of have that weird, you start talking to yourself and saying these weird stuff. So it is a very relatable type of storyline. And of course, Stephen King, he really loved the way they adapted it to film. Just had the minor changes, I'm sure, and of course the reception. Like I said, from people my age, I owned this movie multiple times throughout VHS, DVD, Blu-ray. It's got that great soundtrack. It just has all these great things that fall in place. And of course, as a kid, I wasn't aware that Stephen King had written the original story and it had been adapted. So like that was just a plus when it came years later, on top of liking the movie. So Stand By Me is definitely a solid one. I'm trying to think of some other cool stuff. Did you read the book at all? Were you reading some Stephen King stuff? The Body, did that come up for you?
You know, that was one, same thing I found out later. I remember reading the credits afterwards, and based on The Body by Stephen King, but it never really clicked until later. I was like, oh yeah, wait a minute, that's a book that's out there I can find. And I went and found it. I don't know what happened to it, but I was looking in recently. I went to one of the stores and they had it in print in a bigger version, and it was pretty expensive, so I was gonna have to wait on that. But yeah, that was great, and it was fun. You know, for me, it was fun. I always enjoyed seeing the movie and then finding out, oh, there's a book about it. Then you go back and you pick up the book and read it and see what the differences are. And yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, when they adapted to the film, they released it in 1986, so just a couple years. Sometimes with books it takes multiple years, but this one I'd say fairly quick turnaround. Or most of the time now they buy it before they even like publish the book, and it's already in development while it's being sold. But in 1986, it was released. Rob Reiner directed. We had Will Wheaton, River Phoenix, Corey Feldman, Jerry O'Connell, and Kiefer Sutherland, young 24 Kiefer Sutherland, on an $8 million budget, made $52 million. So it's a solid turnaround for just a small, like, a small budget film, or small, like, there's no real action. There's one gun in the entire movie, basically, and a switchblade that Kiefer Sutherland just refuses to keep in his pocket.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I believe this was Kiefer's one of his first roles.
Yeah, you're right. Definitely one of his first roles. But he grabs your attention. Like, he eats up every scene he's in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's, when he's on there, you knew he was going to be something. And man, yeah, that was fantastic. And I remember I had so much relatability with the kids. Thinking about back at that time, my neighborhood was pretty bare. Wasn't a lot of houses out there, so my friends and I were always out camping in the fields, having a great time. We used to walk through. There was several fields in a row we'd walk through to get to the movie theater. And I remember we'd seen this movie on VHS, and then like within a couple of days, we went on our adventure through the woods to go see The Predator. And I mean, we were, hopping the fence. We were having a great time thinking about things that were going to chase us and whatever. And like, oh yeah, this is... Now, of course, after we saw The Predator, now we were commandos on a different mission.
I thought you were going to say we avoided the woods altogether after The Predator.
No, we were still pretty dumb.
Well, that's the thing too. It's like it gets you this motivation, like, going back to like Treehouse is another one of those old school movies with that perfect treehouse that you envision you and your friends having fun in, like they did.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. And how many times did my food fall off the stick? Just like that kid. Yeah. And I mean,
it's a perfect ensemble of characters, because every group has like the one friend who's a little timid. Everyone has the good looking friend who gets all the girls, and then they have the crazy friend who pushes everything a little too far, and of course there's always the fat friend.
Yes. Yep. And you love sitting around and insulting each other, and it's all cool.
Yeah, and one of the cool parts about the movie too, and they mentioned when they're sitting around the campfire and they're like, boys having conversations about nothing before girls came into the picture. Like, you're just talking about if what was Goofy? Was he a dog or what? Like, those type of conversations. I remember having those conversations with my friends before girls came into play, and that was all you talked about afterwards. So it's another one of those, like, Stephen King or whoever adapted it for that part, just like they knew perfectly, and it's just that relatable part about the movie just still kind of hits me whenever they talk about. So it's always been a well received movie. Even Gene Siskel, gave it 2 thumbs up. They really liked it. Best film made out of anything I've written, said Stephen King. So it's got 2 thumbs up from almost everybody. So I haven't heard too many people who have pulled the Forrest Gump situation, where Forrest Gump was like the most renowned movie in the 90s, and now like everybody hates it for some reason, thinks it's like a piece of shit. I don't know why, but Stand By Me has stand true the whole time, and I think it still will. So yeah, it's definitely one of the better ones, and it is one of those, now knowing it's a book, that I have to go back and see what the differences are. Now as you see the movie, you can now envision everything a little easier as you're reading along. So yeah, The Body, aka Stand By Me, was my second best one.
And it's a short story, so it's a quick read.
Yeah, I got so novellas is what they have been calling them. I guess it's it's a short story, long short stories they want to call them. So yeah, definitely have to check that one out. So what's your next one?
All right, my next best one, I went outside the box with this. I was writing down some notes for one, and I was like, you know what? This is a little too obvious. Let me think of something different here. I came back with Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Here occurred the frightening and shocking history of Prince Dracula and the woman he loved.
I have crossed oceans of time to find you.
What are you?
Vampires do exist. This one we fight, this one we face, can take on many forms. He is both young and old.
She is a willing recruit and devoted disciple. She is the devil's concubine. Dragon!
Join me in eternal life.
Your salvation is his destruction.
I want to be what you are. I want to see what you see. I want to love what you love. Take me away from all this death.
Ooh. Keanu Reeves one? Is that what you're...
Yes, with Keanu. And a little topical. It's been in the news lately with Winona and Keanu. Bram Stoker wrote this back in 1897. This is known as one of the truer or closer to the source material of all of them, although they took a couple of liberties here and there. But they wanted to tell the story with a few twists and a couple of things that I thought, for me, one of the things with my best list was I wanted to find the books where they did something to amp it up and make the movie a little bit better, maybe. And like they made this relationship with Mina and Dracula, where she was the reincarnation of his wife. I thought it was fantastic. I loved that. It was non-existent in the original. That didn't happen. Mina was essentially just going to be another of his many wives. Mm-hmm. And I was talking with my daughter about it earlier, and she was shocked. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, Mina was just like, hey, you're pretty hot. I'm gonna bite you, and you're gonna suck my blood. And then she's traumatized. And whereas in the movie, I mean, you got, they're writhing all over each other on the bed, and I mean, she wanted it. And
a little more Cinemax style in the movie.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, and it was a sexy horror movie. For 1992, Gary Oldman, Winona Ryder, Anthony Hopkins, Keanu Reeves, and Cary Elwes. Plus, they had the best-selling soundtrack with the international hit "Love Song for a Vampire" by Annie Lennox of the Eurythmics.
Yeah, I remember that poster being eye-catching as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
One of the coolest posters, just with the face and the wall, kind of like a statue almost.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. They did. They had a lot of fun with it. The release was done to coincide with the 95th anniversary of the novel. What was funny was that the Winona Ryder was the one who found the script. She was approached by somebody about it because they were going to be doing a TV movie, is what they were looking to do with the script. She took it and went to Coppola as kind of an apology. She was hoping to reconnect with him because she had left Godfather 3 last minute.
Is that why his daughter was in it?
Yes, I think so.
Wow. Thanks, Winona.
Yeah. She had left. It caused all kinds of production problems. She took the script, went to Coppola, saying like, "Hey, look, let's reconnect, let's work things out. Hey, by the way, I've got this script about Dracula. I think it's gonna be great." And he agreed. Ironically, they sat down and wrote down, "Hey, what's our dream list of the actors we put on here?" And just about everybody who came on was on that list, including Keanu. The studio wanted. It's funny to me now. The studio wanted Johnny Depp, but
I can see it.
I can see it. Coppola didn't think he was hot enough. Didn't think he was enough of a heartthrob, and he wanted Keanu.
I'm a huge fan of Keanu Reeves, but I too was like, this is a great cast, and then there's Keanu in this movie. What the hell is happening? Because this is literally like 6 months after Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey came out, and then all of a sudden he's in this super serious movie, which, I mean, it's great if you want to branch out, but like, it was literally like Bill and Ted was still in theaters, I think, when they were like
Bill
releasing
and Ted, his surfing movie with Patrick Swayze.
Via con Dios, like some Point Break action, yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, it was, anytime Dracula was around, you just waited for him to go, whoa. But at the same time, it was great. I loved it. It's one of those that it made me go back and reread the novel. I had a chance to get the Audible years later, actually just a couple years ago, listened to it again, and I actually appreciated the Audible version of it a little more than reading it. And it was really cool because it had Tim Curry reading parts of it.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, that was really nice.
So you think that Pennywise is reading to you at night? I don't think you want to go to sleep to that.
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, this is one that my wife and I, we can go back to this movie every year. October, we will check it out. If it happens to be on TV, oh yeah, we're going to stop. We're going to watch it. We're going to check it out. It was a blockbuster hit, and I thought a very good adaptation.
Wasn't it one of those that back in the day it was a double VHS? It was so long.
Ooh, I think it was around 200 minutes long.
It was like one of those Bravehearts and Titanics where you had it was taking up too much room in your VHS case.
Yes, I think I don't know. I think they got it onto one, but I do like my DVD better with all the extra features and stuff.
I'm sure. No, I'd be interested in like the behind the scenes stuff. There's a lot of cool makeup and like just a lot of interesting like the production setup and just everything about that movie. I would be interested to see what the behind the scenes looks like. So yeah. That's great. Like you said, every time I think of that movie, I think of Gary Oldman's great makeup, and I just also question why Keanu's even in it.
Yeah. Yeah, Gary Oldman, he's still down as one of the top Draculas of all time for his portrayal in this. There was no special effects. Well, no digital, kind of effects from that. It was all natural stuff. So just camera tricks, mirrors, all that kind of stuff is all they did throughout to give it that extra realism to get you back into that time of the 19th century and hunting him down. So it was nice.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's been a while since I've seen that movie, and to go back and check it out again. So yeah, another solid one. So now we're getting into the second worst one. At this point, we're almost getting down there. So my second worst one is from a series of books that we are familiar with. One of them that was one of the greatest movies ever released to this day, they always say. But this one's the sequel to it. It's called The Marvelous Land of Oz, Ozma of Oz, or AKA Return to Oz.
Remember how we spoke?
Not to talk about Oz.
This electrical marvel will make it possible for you to sleep again.
We have to get you out of here. Alina?
Who else?
That was the Emerald City. What happened to everybody?
She has returned to Oz.
I am TikTok.
My name's Jack Pumpkinhead.
What happened to the Emerald City?
Gnome King turned everyone to stone. I believe I'll lock you in the tower till your head is ready. Then I'll take you.
I believe you will not. We are here with our army.
She's more powerful than I thought.
So yes, by a good old L. Frank Baum. So for those who, yes, this one, it shook me as a kid, to say the least. Based off the, it's not just one book from Baum. It's a conglomerate of like the couple books they took some themes from. They put into this plot line for Return to Oz. So Walt Disney had owned the rights or whatever, and they needed to get it out because I guess within a few years it's going to be out to the open domain. So like, let's rush. We got to get something out. So that's in June of 1985. Disney released Return to Oz, the movie. And for those who have not seen any footage of this movie, you have to. Like, it's crazy. It's just like, it reminds me of like a Tim Burton movie come to life, like with the way like the puppets and everything they worked with the costumes. It's crazy. But it was released with a budget of $28 million, grossing only $11 million. Oh. So. But the thing is, it was one of those movies that was like, it's so bad it's good kind of situations that like so many people were so intrigued on like how much effort and like detail went into it, but then it just fell flat on its face. And again, like I said, it was basically made kind of under rush because of course they wanted to keep the rights, or they wanted to get it out before they lost the rights. So it's kind of a rushed, let's send Dorothy back to Oz because there's things going on with her old friends, and she has some new friends. I think like TikTok and the Jack Pumpkinhead guy, basically Jack Skellington in real life. It was a nightmare inducing as a little 3-year-old child for myself watching this. So I don't know if it's I think I've seen it on YouTube that they have like the full version on there, but if you haven't checked it out, you have to. Was Return to Oz one of those that you checked out when it came out as well?
Oh my gosh, yes. Same thing. I think I saw it on TV when it came out, and my parents, of course, it's Wizard of Oz. It was one of those that was a TV event every year. It was like, oh, this is on, we're gonna watch it, so you watch along. And then when this came out, it was like, oh yeah, well it's Wizard of Oz. We'll check this out. This is what happens later. And I remember just sitting there going, oh my God, what's going on? What the heck is this? What's the Pumpkinhead guy? Wasn't that Farazuka Balk as Dorothy?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right. I'm trying to look at the name actually.
Yeah, it would be Waterboy's girlfriend.
Yes. Bobby Boucher.
There you go. Yes. Yeah, I just remember. I remember seeing her, and I was trying to put it together. Of, wait a minute, how is Dorothy suddenly younger, and how is she going back as a younger girl and trying to understand and just so freaky. Oh man, that traumatized would be a good word for it.
Yeah, they basically had to edit. Like what we saw was an already edited version. Disney was all like, when they saw the original, like, oh my God, you have to cut out like a bunch of this because we cannot show this to children. And what we got was still like borderline, horror movie, but that was like the best they got out of the edited versions or multiple edited versions to make this as less creepy as possible, but it still had that creepy factor.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
And I think to the point where they still have some of the sets where they filmed. Like I think it's in some like North Carolina or somewhere where they filmed some of it. Like it's actual yellow brick road and like all this like exterior like sets that they kept around since that movie that people still like, they go check out, which I'd be interested in going to see. Like when I saw it on YouTube, it looks like they, it's abandoned, but still in somewhat decent condition, which it just goes to show that even the Oz name can still attract, at least that type of interest, even though the movie itself wasn't that great, real dark in tone and just completely different in regards to the majesty of the first one. Just basically building off the name and not much else. So yeah, like I said, MGM and some other and Disney, they're all kind of working together just trying to get this out before it went to the public domain in like 1985. And I think that was the last real Oz movie we got until we get that James Franco one a couple of years back.
I think this was a little more Alice in Wonderland than the Wizard of Oz we're familiar with. It was very out there.
It was definitely, and it's kind of hard to compare because, like I said, it was kind of a couple storylines put together for one, but it's just one of those. It's like, man, like I wonder if Baum saw his material being like picked together and put together for just a rush job just to keep rights. I'm sure he would not be very happy with that. So that was my second worst one, the Return to Oz.
Oh man, good one. All right, my second worst one. We're back in the King universe. So from 1985, Silver Bullet.
Ooh.
This was one. It was based on his novella Cycle of the Werewolf, which was originally going to be a calendar with photos drawn up by a guy for each month of the year, and then he had his short story to go with each month. It didn't work out. It didn't give him enough room that he wanted, so he decided to just do up the story and put it out there. And I believe he later on put out the pictures that this guy made for the calendar. The novel was the werewolf in a small town of Tarker's Mill, which exists within the King universe. So you got the neighboring towns of Derry and so many others. But there's a werewolf killing people every month of the year around the full moon. King was notorious for getting technical aspects wrong. So if there was a full moon on New Year's Eve, it's not going to line up for Valentine's Day. But he was like, screw it. This is my story. It's going to happen. So yeah, there was little things like that. Gun calibers were not quite right. Certain guns that were used in the book, but beside that, the book was just fun, and it was a novella again, so it was a quick read and just fun to think about that you're spending a whole year chasing this werewolf. But then you get the movie with Corey Haim and Gary Busey.
Those two names, just throwing out those two names, and I'm just already you're in for a ride.
And I tell you, it's now the funny thing is, this is back in Gary Busey's real heyday, after he had won an Academy Award.
Was that for the Buddy Holly story?
Yeah, Buddy Holly story. Yes. So this was before his Amazon Fire Stick commercials and
before he had like an apparent like motorcycle that actually like just messed up his brain one way or another, I guess.
Exactly. So yeah, you got Corey Haim, Gary Busey, Everett McGill, and Megan Follows, Terry O'Quinn as the sheriff. I mean, one of the big things for me, and I think a lot of people look back at it, is the bear suit. They spent, I think, 3 months working on this werewolf costume that Stephen King himself was giving them advice on, saying, "Oh yeah, no, it's going to be a shapeless mass. It needs to be very, you can't tell what's coming after you." And by the time they got done, and they used bear hair on it, it looked exactly like that. It just looked like a bear costume. They had hired a dancer. It was a Dino De Laurentiis film. He had hired a dancer to come in and play the werewolf so he could move very majestically, and as if that would be scarier. But then he hated the way that guy moved. He said it was terrible. So they had the actor as the werewolf actually put on the suit, and I don't know if it was any different or not. But I don't remember the face moving, but the werewolf's face. But apparently there was animatronics going on, and some guys about 10 or 15 feet away with hoses and stuff moving it. The werewolf was supposed to speak in snarling language, and it was just one of those that why not? You might as well have put it in there.
Well, it sounds like they could have put some more money to the animatronics and stuff, but I think according to this cast and the writer, I'm sure there was a decent amount of this budget that went to cocaine.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, Steven, we could probably up the ante on this wolf, but you have done eight balls in the last 3 days, so we cannot do that.
Oh my gosh. Well, it's a De Laurentiis film, but yet all throughout my research, it was how much that Stephen King gave the okay to. I guess Busey had went to King, "Hey, can I ad-lib this stuff? Because I think I can really relate to Uncle Red." And he's like, "Yeah, sure, go for it, man. Just, go for it. Just whatever you feel like is going to happen."
Well, was King directing this too?
No, he's just got the writer credit.
Yeah, that's true.
He did do the screenplay, so I guess he was on hand for any kind of screenplay edits or whatever. But
he might have learned his lesson on Maximum Overdrive.
Yes, absolutely. It was just one of those. They changed it up where instead of over the time span of a year, they shortened it, which I think was a good idea, just over a couple months. Ironically, the werewolf uses a baseball bat to kill 2 people instead of just ripping out their throats.
His thumbs too? This werewolf has thumbs? Is that what you're telling me, basically?
Apparently so, yes. It was all the same. It's one of those that it's not so bad that it's a groaner. It's just bad enough that you love it.
You're kind of shaking your head. You're like, "Oh, Stephen King, you did it again.
Exactly.
You got it. You snuck another one by us all."
Yeah. But yeah, it was fun. They had one of the things I thought was interesting was they did a little bit of talking about the silver bullet. And the kids handing over the medallion to turn it into a silver bullet, which was a nod directly to the old 1700 story, which was the origin of the silver bullet killing a werewolf. There was an old tale, and it's a true story, called the Beast of. It's a French tale, the Beast of Gévaudan. Now they later on made a movie inspired by this. It was a true story about a giant wolf in the woods of France that killed a lot of people, attacked and killed a lot of people, hundreds.
Damn.
And the guy who finally killed him had lost a family member. He melted down a silver medallion, took it to the church, and had the priest bless it 3 times. And lo and behold, he happens to find the wolf and shot and killed it. And thus the legend of a silver bullet being the only thing to kill a werewolf was born.
Well, man, that guy ruined it for everybody because he probably could have done the same without the blessings and not the silver part. But yeah, we'll take the lore. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So if nothing else, God bless Stephen King for keeping the werewolf lore alive.
Yeah, no, I mean, we knew we'd have a couple Stephen Kings on here, which, sometimes it's quality over quantity type of situations, and, he has his ups and downs, but he's always coming up with something. You had to give him credit. He's always coming up with something.
Yep, absolutely. And I couldn't figure out if he had a bit part in this one yet or not. He has
like as a gas station attendant or something like that.
Yeah. He's always usually he has a little bit part, but I couldn't find out if he had one in here or not.
Oh, I'm sure he's in there somewhere. We'll set to it's another Stephen King Easter egg we'll have to look up.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, cool. Well, yes, nice solid choice here. So now we're down to our last best and last worst. So my last best one right now is one that came out in 1979, and it's called Nothing Lasts Forever, aka Die Hard.
Thank you, one and all, and wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
It's Christmas Eve in L.A. But a team of terrorists.
You want money? What kind of terrorists are you? Who said we were terrorists?
But the one thing they didn't plan on was New York cop John McClane.
Got invited to the Christmas party by mistake.
We have already killed one hostage.
This channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
Lady, do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
What does he think he's doing?
His job.
They're using artillery on us.
Good idea. It's not the police. It's him.
He's an easy guy to like.
Welcome to the party, pal.
And a hard man to kill. Bruce Willis. Die Hard.
I'm right there with you.
I feel like with your smile there, we might have the same one, or you just love that one that much.
That's the one I was saving for last two.
Well, we can join in on this one with the good old Roderick Thorpe.
Excellent.
Yes, 1979. He wrote this as a sequel to the Detective. I had no idea. After he saw The Towering Inferno, which is another skyscraper movie, he had a dream of being chased through skyscraper with men with guns. So he woke up later and turned into the Detective sequel, Nothing Lasts Forever, which of course we get to. And the end result get Die Hard. Not too much difference actually in regards to the plot line. Just a couple character differences. You saw that too?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, that really surprised me to see how many things. Him jumping off the roof to escape an explosion. The C4 bomb, taping the gun to his back. So many.
Those
things.
Are great ones. Like when they listed off those are what they kept. I'm like, thank you. Those are some of the best scenes that they kept in. Like,
oh gosh, yeah. Oh yeah, I mean those are ones that they had to have just jumped off the page at them and like, yeah, we got to do this.
Just marked them like, yep, that one we're keeping. And like he's going in the book, he's going to see his daughter as opposed to his wife. And then I guess the little Tony the Red Gruber, I guess is Anton instead of Hans, not Anton.
Yes.
And then there's the terrorists or the villains weren't terrorists. They're of course still people who just wanted to get monetary gain, which was another great plot line in the book, in the movie and book itself. Is we're getting that huge trope of getting the Middle Eastern or the Russians or somebody coming in to try to further their political thing, but people want to get rich. That's basically the bottom line. But yeah, it was one of those. Again, I had no idea it was a book. Now I have to go back and read this Nothing Lasts Forever and see how it holds up. Again, is this another one that you had read before, or we'll have to go back to?
I had no idea until just a couple of years ago when an author friend of mine mentioned it. He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm reading this book, and it's the one that inspired Die Hard." And I was like, "What do you mean inspired? Like you hear, oh, this inspired that, and it's nothing like it." And he was like, "Oh no, it's pretty on par." He's like, "Yeah, it's not John McClane, it's Joe Leland." And the guy's what was it? He was like a World War II or a Korean War veteran, something like that. But he goes, aside from that and a couple of names, really, it's very much the same story. So that shocked me to hear that. But yeah, so I made sure I picked up a copy for my Kindle. It's on my list of 80,000 other books I'm trying to get to. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
I would say, well, yeah, because they had it didn't take long. They had released the movie in '88, but they were considering like all kinds of actors for McClane. Or they had let's see, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, all these big like action stars. But Bruce Willis is coming off, what was it, Moonlighting? Yeah.
Moonlighting, yes.
It was unheard of to come from like TV or smaller films like he was to an action star, like getting paid big bucks, kind of like the like Arnold's and Sylvester Stallone. So It was kind of one of those, like, they wanted to have the kind of an everyday man, because that's basically the portrayal. It's like he's getting hurt throughout this entire time. Like it's not like in like Commando where Arnold Schwarzenegger is untouchable, but like you see his feet are bleeding the whole time. His facial expressions are like you would think that you would give the same expression if you're walking on your feet that are shattered with glass. Like just so many realisms to it that he brought.
Yeah, and that was something I remember hearing about from the book. My friend of mine was telling me, he said, it's you believe the damage. I mean, McClane's taking on damage. Or in this case, Leland, he's taking on the damage. He's not your typical superhero. He's a believable hero. So yeah, he's gonna get shot. He's hurting. He's not gonna be like, no worry, it's just a flesh wound. Yeah, he's gonna be suffering. He's gonna be trying to tough through it. And I believe you by the end of the book, you're wondering, was like, man, is he gonna make it through all the wounds that he's got? And it's funny you said Arnold with Commando, because this was they approached him with this role as a sequel.
Oh, really?
Commando.
Wow, didn't know that at all.
Yeah, they had they had to contractually, because Sinatra was in the original.
He like had first first refusal or something like that.
He had
it's crazy.
So they had to contractually. They had to go.
Like there's like at one point in time, Frank Sinatra was basically a given for this role.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I would have loved to see that at the same time.
He's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do the action scenes and the soundtrack too.
Hey baby. But yeah. So then when he declined, that's when they started the search, and I guess somebody had been pushing for Bruce Willis for a while, and they kept saying, no, we can't have this comedic actor. But the legend was born once they went along with it, and they just announced number 6, McClane.
That's the best they could come up with. Like Die Hard Another Day, or Good Habits Die Hard stuff. Just I don't need a number. I don't need his name. Anything else? Just keep Die Hard in there.
Yep. Yeah, as long as it's better than the last one.
Yeah, I stopped after. Yeah, I stopped after with a vengeance. Like I'll keep it to a trilogy for my viewing when it comes to Die Hard. Well, this one when it came out on a $28 million budget made $140 million. So Bruce Willis was a star overnight, basically, when an action star overnight. As soon as this movie came out. Alan Rickman, another one where this is basically his first on-screen film that he did. He'd been doing like theater and stuff like that, but this is his first on-screen. He was like 40 years old too, and this is his first one. He used to hit it out of the park, like one of the most iconic villains that this people were mimicking him like for their villains for years after this. We kept getting different versions of Hans Gruber, throughout the 80s and 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fantastic. It's just such an iconic villain. So, nobody could come close to this ever again. That was just, Alan Rickman, bless his soul, rest in peace. And of course, it's no secret, everybody knows about the fall at the end, that they dropped him on.
Yeah, they're like, we're going to do it on 3, and then they actually do it on 1 or 2, and his face is genuinely like, you son of a bitch.
Yep. It's fantastic stuff. So your opinion, is it a Christmas movie?
Yeah, so that's always the hot question. Yes, because he's going to a Christmas party, technically, right? This is what, even though it's in L.A., it's a Christmas party.
It's Christmas Eve, so
yeah. So I mean, and he writes "ho ho ho" on a guy's chest, a dead body's chest. So, I mean, it's not a full out like Home Alone type Christmas movie, but I will watch it during Christmas. So that's where I stand on it. What about you?
I agree with you. Yes, if we can get it on. If I can convince my wife, who surprised me the last year, she was like, "Oh yeah, we're watching Die Hard." Okay,
nice. You got to keep her there. Yeah. See, that's how we did our first tradition. I was like, you know what? We haven't watched Die Hard as a Christmas movie, so we watched it, and I was very glad we did, and we'll be doing it again this year.
There you go. Yes.
So yes.
Yeah. They had the roast recently with Bruce, and he said it's not. I agree with the others who said, "Bruce, sit down. You're drunk."
Well, he says he didn't think it lives up to the hype, or what?
He says it is not a Christmas movie.
Oh, man,
Bruce. It just happens at Christmas. So
He's already walking on eggshells with many of his fans, and then he goes and does that. Oh well, whatever. When you're that rich, you don't care, I guess.
There you go. There you go. Yep.
Well, then that was my last best one. So we'll go to our last worst one. So you go with your worst one.
All right, my worst one, which was tough. There was a few to pick from. I started leaning towards Starship Troopers by Robert Heinlein, but even though it's completely different from the book, I love the movie. It's such a
the movie's too tongue-in-cheek. It knows what it's doing.
Exactly, yeah. So I ended up coming back and settling on another Sylvester Stallone movie, Cobra.
Society is breeding a new kind of criminal. It's also breeding a new kind of cop. Meet Cobra. He does the job nobody wants.
Did you use unnecessary deadly force?
I used everything I had.
Do you know you have an attitude problem?
Yeah, but it's just a little one.
Do what you have to do to get a lead on this maniac.
And if I find him?
Do what you do best.
Stallone is Cobra.
From 1986.
Wow.
This is based on, where's my notes here? Loosely based on a novel called Fair Game by Paula Gosling, which ironically was turned into a movie by the same name in '95.
I had to interject. I only know that because I would always pause as a kid when they would the Baldwin and Cindy Crawford were getting on in the train. I would always pause it as a kid at that point. So Fair Game was one of my favorite movies as an elementary school kid.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, she wrote Fair Game in 78. Later retitled it as A Running Duck in 79. I don't know why. I couldn't find a reason why either. But it was still known by a lot of people as Fair Game because I believe that's what the script had been written for already. Now, ironically, this goes back a little bit, so hang with me here. So Stallone had been brought on for Beverly Hills Cop. He was going to be the Eddie Murphy character. He was the Beverly Hills Cop. He took the script and rewrote it, as he does, and took out all the comedy. 1984 took out all the comedy, did major rewrites, made it into this action epic, which the studio promptly said, no, we're not doing that. Sorry, this is too much. So he walked and took his ideas with him. Promptly picked up the script for Fair Game, and then grabbed his ideas from Beverly Hills Cop, all the action and everything, and inserted it into this. And there was still enough source material from Fair Game that the author, Paula Gosling, got a screen credit, that this is based on her book. Still similar. I was doing some research, checking it out. I have not read the book. It's got some mixed reviews, but it still is close enough that they used it. And oddly enough, when the movie came out, she talked about maybe reissuing the book again. And I can't tell who reached out to who, but it looks like Stallone reached out to her and said, hey, how about I help you out with the edits and the rewrite, and then I'll just take a co-author edit on there. And she declined, respectfully declined. So
smartly declined as well. Yes.
yes. Although she did put the book back out, and then with the little tagline, now as the movie Cobra by Sylvester Stallone. So, or I guess the publisher did that. But you've got let's see here. A tough cop on crime, or a tough crime on the street cop must protect the only surviving witness to a strange murderous cult with far-reaching plans. The whole tagline is "Crime is the disease, meet the cure."
Wait, they use one of his quotes from the movie for the tagline too?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it goes. Yeah, he's got so many great one-liners. It's so bad you gotta love some of it though.
It's like the tail end of like that, what Die Hard was trying to counter. The whole like macho man like cop who can't he can take on anything. He has no weaknesses. You never see him get hurt.
Exactly.
One of those.
Yeah. I mean, it came out it came out in '86, not too long before Die Hard. It was actually up against Top Gun. They had come out earlier in the year. Now, their original length of the movie was way too long, and it was going to get an X rating.
Whoa!
From the
for
violence,
the length or for the violence?
From the violence and the graphic nudity. A guy gets an axe to the face. All kinds of things. Things for the 80s that was a little over the top.
That they considered normal for 12-year-olds and under.
Yeah, today, yes. You can just find that online anywhere. So they cut a lot of it back, and then they cut more of it, which undid a lot of the storylines, left a lot of plot holes. But they did that on purpose. They dropped it down to, I think, 86 minutes in order to get more show times during the day.
Yeah, that's like the classic 80s runtime. Like it was barely between 85 and 90 minutes.
Exactly. So, yeah, but I mean, you got such wonderful lines. I don't deal with psychos. I put them away. The Night Stalker during their showdown, he's lost his weapon, so he's telling Cobra, like, all right, well, you got to put me away, right, pig? The court is civilized, and I'm going to get away. Isn't it, pig? And Cobra, of course, but I'm not. This is where the law stops, and I start. Sucker. I'm just... Stallone, Brigitte Nielsen, when they started dating, right after Rocky IV, which, of course, he brought her into this because this is my girlfriend. This was her movie. Art LaFleur and Brian Thompson as the Night Stalker, who this was his first role. He's one of those actors, big, beefy guy. You see him in roles all the time. You recognize him, but you don't know his name. Good
old Art LaFleur. He was the babe in the Sandlot, for sure.
Yes, there you go. It was interesting. From what I understand, Stallone really was the director. The other guy was there as a producer. They were falling behind on the schedule, and somebody had the balls to walk up to Stallone. Stallone was complaining about it, and they said, well, if you weren't farting around with your girlfriend all the time and showing off with the stuntmen, maybe we'd be on schedule.
Oh.
And they thought he was going to get fired, but Stallone has a good sense of humor and laughed it off, and they said for the next 3 weeks, everything went fine, and then he was kind of back in his old ways again, so...
Yeah, I actually listened to this podcast, We Hate Movies, and they had recently done their review on Cobra and talked about some stories about Sly being a bit of a diva on set, maybe staying in character a little too much, holding that toothpick and those aviators on a little too long, trying to boss people around, or just have that diva Hollywood A-lister mentality when it comes to acting. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all. Which I'm glad that the running joke that I'm not sure many people know about. He got humbled a few years later when Arnold tricked him into taking the movie "So I Stop or My Mom Will Shoot." Arnold, like as a joke, would tell his agent to make Sly's agent think that Arnold really wanted that role. So they were competing for roles at the time, and so Sly did whatever he could to get that role, thinking it was some crazy awesome role. Turns out to be this shitty indie cop role or whatever it was. Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. So hopefully he got humbled when it came to that.
I would hope so. I tell you what, Arnold, he is a trickster. He did that with Jesse Ventura in Predator.
For what?
Again. They were back and forth over who's got the bigger arms, and so when they showed up on set, Arnold told the guy doing the costumes, said, "Hey, when you're measuring arms, tell him my arms are smaller. Make sure the shirts are certain sizes." So Jesse got huge head, was telling everybody on set, "Yeah, my arms are bigger than Mr. Universe over there," until they got together and they posed, and everybody was like, "Okay, that's not right." No, sorry, Jesse.
That's great. See, if we were only 6'3" and Mr. Olympian, we could pull stuff off like that.
That would be great. Yes.
Well, no, that's a solid Cobra. I did not see that one coming. I have seen it. I don't think I need to go back and see it again, though.
Yeah. I was shocked at the history with Beverly Hills Cop. That really amazed me, and it was the first one I started studying, and it took me the longest because I went down the rabbit hole with that.
You
one.
Definitely sound like you had some great info. Though that was a great one for sure. So Cobra, definitely an intriguing one. So my last one is a book from 1986, and it was turned into an animated film. It is the Brave Little Toaster.
Hang on to your hats, you devil dogs, because the master blaster of all time is going to give you a soul injection.
They're the 5 spunkiest little characters you've ever met.
It's a possibility.
For years, they've been waiting.
Can you see?
Is it him?
And waiting.
He loved us.
That's right.
For their master to come home.
Master! Blanky!
We've been dumped, abandoned.
We're not gonna give up hope.
But now their waiting is over.
We're going out to find him.
What?
We're gonna go out and find the master.
Join a brave little toaster and his unusual pals on a magical journey. They're 5 plucky appliances determined to find their master no matter what.
Yeah, no matter what.
Join an inquisitive radio.
Well, what does that mean?
A bright little lamp.
I'm glad we don't have to do this every day.
A snuggly blanket.
Mm-hmm.
A crotchety old vacuum cleaner.
You're telling me.
And a brave little toaster.
Time to go.
In a heartwarming story for the entire family. Plug into the adventure of The Brave Little Toaster.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I'm going old school, a little lighter. This one, of course, for those is like the Toy Story before Toy Story, where we had small appliances, we're talking and, going on adventures. The book, of course, is not too different from the movie itself, where we have the blanket, we have the alarm clock, we have the vacuum cleaner, and then the AC. So like all these things, they're trying to get back to their master, and it's one of those, like, of course, with the Toy Story, with the toys trying to get back to Andy. So it's all these, you're pulling these emotional strings, especially as a kid, where you're losing shit left and right. So you lost your favorite blanket, it's wondering where you're at, so you're crying because you think your blanket's crying. All these weird, existential things going on in your head as a kid. And this is kind of just drove it home. And I remember, like, it was one of the first animated films I remember watching a lot as a kid. Mm-hmm. And not reading the book, not so much, but the movie itself, which came out literally like a year after the movie. So I think it was one of those already bought and ready to go by the time the book came out. But they released it in 1987, $2.3 million budget, made $2.3 million. So didn't quite hit the pockets like they wanted to, but I guess it was popular enough, maybe through VHS sales, that they did the direct-to-TV or direct-to-video type sequels. I never watched those, but the first one, it definitely hit home. The big difference between the book and the movie, in the movie, the kid, all the appliances, they meet up with their master and they have a big reunion, big happy ending. But in the book, that doesn't happen. They don't get to meet with the original master, but they do meet up with like a different person that becomes kind of like a new owner type of situation. So it's almost like, basically, yes, Pixar is still stealing ideas from original books and putting them into their books. They did it to the movies because they did that for Toy Story 3. So, but for me, this was one I had to move back and forth because I liked it, because I enjoyed it as a kid, but looking back at it now, it doesn't quite hold up, and it has some flaws here and there. It does have some cool voice actors. We got John Lovitz and Phil Hartman in there.
Yeah.
I guess when you're taking a break from SNL and doing lots of cocaine, then you do little kid voiceover acting is what you do back then.
Man, I missed this one. I had no idea that this was a book. I was looking at Secret of NIMH for my top list, but yeah, I missed the Brave Little Toaster.
Yeah, again, like I said, I didn't watch the directed videos, but the original one just kind of, it has enough of that nostalgia for me that I can still like watch it, or maybe in future let me have my kids watch it or something like that. But in regards to box office and that type of stuff, didn't quite hit with the like the studios would have liked. But it's just John Lasseter is the one who actually found this one. Who I guess previous director of Pixar, or CEO of Pixar. He's kind of in hot water at this point in time, but he's the one who kind of actually learned about the original story and brought it and purchased it for Disney, pitched a 30-second clip for them to do that. So now we know why Toy Story 3 actually did have that, because John Lasseter kept that in his back pocket for a little while.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
So yeah, Brave Little Toaster, like I said, it's just kind of one of those snuck in there. I had no idea that one was a book as well.
I remember we went, my wife and I went it'd be a couple years later. Our son was like 2, I think, at the time, and we were like, oh yeah, we never saw this. We always wanted to check this movie out. Picked it up, brought it home, put it in, and I can't remember if we ended up watching it or not, but I remember our son just like coming in crying, like, I don't want to watch it. This is scaring me. I'm like, man, what's going on? And we went back in there and started watching it with him. And we were like, oh my gosh, what is going on with this movie?
We can say that with a lot of 80s, mid to late 80s movies where they just like, this is before we had the PG-13, I think. I forget when that was instilled, but before then, they were just letting studios get away with murder, literally, on the screen for kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If it was animated, yeah, you could do whatever you wanted to do. Yep.
Oh, yeah. We got some weird stuff back in the day for sure. So, yeah. Well, Jason, well, that was my last one. We had an awesome list of our best and worst that I'm sure we got some listeners intrigued to either go check out the movie or at least go check out the book. One way or another, you have options now. You don't have to sit down and read it. You can listen through Audible or, have somebody else read it to you if you're that fancy, possibly. So well, were there any other ones you wanted to talk about, or any runner-ups that you saw?
Oh boy, on the favorite side, there was plenty. Like I said, I was a big fan of Dances with Wolves. The movie was, I think the movie was definitely better than the book. Fantastic. Misery was another one that was right up there for me. Fantastic, amazing book, amazing movie. On the downside, like I said, you got Starship Troopers, The Postman. Again, another Kevin Costner one. That was one where the book was just really, really weird. Especially the ending of it. You have a real case of Deus Ex Machina at the end of it in the book. So the movie does a little bit better of tying things together. So that was good, but yeah, wow, that was crazy. And right now I'm in the middle of Clan of the Cave Bear with my daughters. I got older daughters, so it works out. But and then other ones that I was surprised, like Cocoon, I had no idea was a novel. We were talking about the ones that we didn't know about. Black Cauldron, I did not know that was a novel.
Oh, well, Disney can't hide it forever then if it's a book.
Exactly.
Well, cool. Yeah, I had a couple, like, I was trying to think, Who Framed, or the book Who Censored Roger Rabbit was one I thought about doing. Of course, the movie, very different, I guess, according to the book. What was another one that I saw? Cujo, another Stephen King. So after seeing that movie recently, I'm like, damn it, this movie's pissing me off. I have to see see this book is better than this movie, because that woman Donna drives me nuts in that movie. So Cujo is definitely another one. I was like, oh yeah, so I'm gonna have to go back and give it another Stephen King another look at it. So yeah, this is some of our honorable mentions there, to see other ones that could have made the list possibly.
Yep.
But yeah, Jason, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on tonight. Let the listeners know where they can find you online to follow and subscribe to the podcast, and also a little bit more about the book as well.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, the podcast, I've got a Facebook page for the Sample Chapter Podcast, so you can find that on Facebook. Also have a Twitter page for that, and every week I have a new author. They read a new sample chapter. It gets shared. I've got enough episodes now that I have my Throwback Thursday with an old episode, and then I share it again for that weekend. A couple of live events I'm doing with the podcast. Actually got one coming up this Thursday, which I don't know when this will air. But
I'll be on this coming Thursday.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so that's a lot of fun. Those are both out there and alive. You can find the podcast on iTunes or anywhere that you download podcasts. The novel, I've got my author page on Facebook, author Jason A. Meuschke. I'm still working on the website, still working on the other things, but yeah, the books are available on Amazon. Essentially, it's the main character, Holly. She has developed amnesia after an accident that killed her boyfriend, and when people around town start treating her differently because of the accident, she begins to see, at the same time, stories are coming back to life about this haunted bridge, and she begins to see similarities between weird dreams that she's having and things going on at the bridge. And so she investigates to see what's going on and finds out that there's a mysterious supernatural force that's got plans for her.
Well, sounds like it's a daytime Audible listen.
So it's fun. Hopefully this will be on somebody's best, worst novel adaptation one day, you know.
Hey, hopefully the best. We'll get there on the best. But hey, as long as it's making any list, right?
There you go. I appreciate that. Yeah. But that's 9 Mile Bridge. It's available on Amazon. Hopefully I can do an Audible here sometime coming up. But just
cool. Yeah, we'll get all the links down there in the description so people can start subscribing to the podcast, listening, and start checking out the book as soon as possible. So we'll get that all out there. So Jason, again, thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, thank you for having me. I can't wait to check out the Twitter and see people telling us, yeah, you're right, or no, you're wrong. Here's the movie that should have been on the list. I'm looking forward to it, man. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be battling probably on a few comments, so we'll see there. So yeah, well, everyone else, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Be Kind and Rewind podcast. Make sure you tune in every Throwback Thursdays for new episodes of the podcast. Subscribe, like, follow, and rate the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, YouTube, and Infirmary Media Podcast Network. Also, follow the podcast on social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Be Kind Rewind Pod for all of your nostalgic needs. So thanks, and be excellent to each other.
And now, a word from
Infirmary Media.